After 6 years of marriage to Oscar, the number of times he touched me became fewer and fewer. In the final year, we had practically become opposite-sex roommates sharing the same bed, until I chose to pierce through that thin layer of pretense and speak to him openly. He finally let out a breath of relief and said, "Yes, I'll handle it properly. She's still so young, I can't hold her back." I froze on the spot. In that instant, my heart turned completely cold. 8 years of knowing each other, 6 years of marriage. At that moment, what he feared was not that I had discovered his affair, but that he might delay the prime years of a beautiful young woman. Chapter 01. Some things were impossible to lie to myself about, even if I wanted to, because the other person's performance was simply far too clumsy. On Oscar's 30th birthday, he was away on a business trip. To give him a surprise, I appeared outside the door of his hotel room. The moment he opened the door, there was only a fleeting flash of astonishment on his face, but not the slightest surprise or joy at my sudden arrival. I was carrying a pile of things in my hands, yet he did not help me take them. He merely kept touching the back of his head and repeating, "I thought Valentina was coming over to deliver some documents." Valentina was his assistant. I said nothing and simply looked at the things in the room. A large bouquet of baby's breath sat on the living room table. On the table, there was also a newly opened pair of the latest smart cinema glasses. Inside the bag I was carrying, there was one of those too. Oscar liked playing games and collecting all kinds of tech products. It seemed the person who had given him a gift and I were quite in sync. Before I could even ask him, he explained in a panic, "My colleagues and friends at the company gave it to me together. I'm going to the bathroom first." He fled into the bathroom in a panic. I sat down on the sofa. The summer that year was especially muggy. Before long, a torrential rain began outside. I looked at the chocolate ice cream cake in the bag, the one I had lined up in advance to buy because it was his favorite. The ice packs had almost melted. The cake seemed unable to hold out much longer either. He still had not come out of the bathroom. Just as my patience was about to run out, he finally came out. With a look of relief, he said to me, "I already said I'd go back and celebrate with you and Sophia. Why did you still rush all the way here like this? You must be tired, right?" I said nothing and only looked at him. He continued searching for things to say, taking the items out of the bags one by one. "Amelia, why did you peel so many pine nuts for me? Don't your hands hurt? My God, the chocolate ice cream cake from this shop is so hard to buy. How long did you wait in line? These glasses, I like them even more." I did not listen to him continue. I interrupted him and said, "Did you finish deleting everything? It took you that long to delete it all?" I tightly gripped the sofa cover beside me. I used so much strength that my fingernails began to ache. When I asked that question, it felt as though my entire body could no longer breathe smoothly. Yet compared to my emotional turmoil, he explained lightly, "Amelia, what are you talking about? Since when did you become so suspicious? Didn't I just explain it to you? That was from colleagues and friends." I stared at him coldly. I only felt that this scene was truly absurd. He was so calm and composed as he gathered words to brush me off. There was barely any emotional fluctuation. I would even have preferred him to panic a little, or be afraid. Anything would have been better. At least then, I would not have seemed so ridiculous. It was as though, from beginning to end, all these years of feelings had become a one-woman show performed by me alone. I sat upright on the sofa, desperately suppressing the surging emotions inside me, and simply listened quietly as he made things up, until he could no longer keep making them up. Finally, he gave in. As though facing someone he could confide in, he began telling me about that girl. He said how foolish she was. He said how much she resembled the younger version of me. He talked about the adorable way she handled things in daily life, and about how deeply she loved him. When he mentioned how mischievous she was, how she would catch mosquitoes and tear them apart, a faint, barely noticeable smile appeared on his face. I did not interrupt him. It was just that my chest hurt unbearably. Every detail he recalled was like dense, countless wounds, strangling my heart. For a moment, I felt as though I was about to lose the ability to breathe. At the end, he summed it all up with one sentence, "Amelia, I'm sorry, but we really haven't done anything out of line. I'll handle this properly. Besides, she's still so young. I can't keep delaying her." With that one sentence, I felt as though a tremendous roar exploded in my ears. 8 years of knowing each other. 6 years of marriage. Now, what he feared was not that I had discovered his emotional affair, but that he might delay the prime years of a beautiful young woman. The glass of water he had handed me on the table remained untouched. I picked it up and splashed it in his face. He raised his hand and wiped the water from his face, then said self-righteously, "Amelia, I understand how you feel. I didn't want something like this to happen either." I truly could not listen anymore. I picked up the bag I had brought with me, stood up, and left. But the moment I opened the door, I turned back, facing him as he stood there in a daze. I slapped him hard several times. Chapter 02. By the time I went back, the rain had already stopped. The weather was as stifling and hot as a steamer. The shirt dress I was wearing was completely stuck to my skin, and I looked as though I had been fished out of water. There were no suitable flights, so I chose the nearest high-speed train. In a daze, I met my own eyes in the reflection of the glass and only then realized that tears had streamed all over my face. How truly pathetic and ridiculous. On my husband's birthday, he was confiding in me about how he had fallen in love with another woman. Was he really that certain he had me completely in his grasp? The more I thought about it, the more I could no longer control my emotions. Several strangers had already leaned over to look at me. I could not bear such sudden concern, so I simply lay down on the small table beside me. I did not want to look so wretched in public, but the more I tried to hold back my tears, the more impossible it became. When I arrived at the station, there were 2 small packets of tissues placed where I had been lying. A passenger beside me had handed them over. The person who had once said he would take care of me and cherish me was now the one who had hurt me the deepest. Yet he had not even given me the kindness of a stranger. I put the tissues into my bag, took out a large pair of sunglasses, and put them on my face. My eyes were already so swollen that they were unbearable to look at. Once I got home, I would still have to pretend. I did not want my daughter to see me like this. See? After getting married and having a child, even when you feel awful, you still have to endure it first and create time and space for yourself. I called my best friend Lily over to my house first and asked her to help take my child away for a day or two. Chapter 03. After handling everything, I went into the bathroom and took a shower, then sat in my room until late into the night. I had no tears left to cry. Why was I the only one who had to suffer? What right did Oscar have to be so calm and unaffected? Countless images flashed through my mind. In this marriage, how my dignity had been lowered little by little, the things he had done the instant he opened the door, and the expression on his face as he described to me how he had fallen in love with her. For a while, I felt completely drained, as though all my persistence had lost its meaning in an instant. I was probably the stupidest woman in the world. My husband, who shared my bed every night, had been cheating for so long, and I only realized it belatedly. An overwhelming urge to pry wrapped itself around me. I wanted to know everything about him and her. I got up and found Oscar's old iPhone in the cabinet in the room. He was an Apple fanatic. Every time a new model came out, he had to buy it, so he often did not have time to log out of his account on his old phones. Then I saw the synced chat records. She was Oscar's junior from the same department at university. Her name was Daniela. Oscar had saved her WeChat contact as Mousa because it sounded like part of her name, and her zodiac sign was also the rat. They began contacting each other frequently 3 years ago. At that time, Daniela had just graduated and spent every day anxious over her thesis and internship. By coincidence, she happened to meet Oscar, who had returned to the university to give a talk as an outstanding alumnus. After going back and forth, the two of them became acquainted and familiar with each other. I numbly scrolled through those chat records. A thank you conversation from one Saturday caught my attention in particular. "Senior, thank you so much. If it weren't for you, I definitely wouldn't have finished this thesis today. I didn't even get the chance to treat you to a meal. Next time, you must let me take you out to dinner, okay?" The timing made me feel as though I had returned to that noon, to the way Oscar and I had been together then. At that time, I had already been 6 or 7 months pregnant with Sophia. Our new home had just been renovated, and we needed to buy furniture. Oscar said he was busy with work, so I handled most of the matters myself. From renovations to buying furniture, I was mostly running around alone. During that period, I walked at least 10,000 steps every day. That Saturday, he rushed out early in the morning. I waited in the new home for the renovation workers to come and install the furniture. To save that little bit of cleaning money, I dragged my pregnant belly around and cleaned the house myself. In the afternoon, Oscar finally hurried back. With a calm expression, he told me that something urgent had come up at the company. Then he lay wearily on the sofa beside me. Unfortunately, the power happened to go out that day. I took a flyer fan from nearby and fanned him with it. He opened his eyes in a daze, then kissed my belly and said, "Amelia, why are you so good to me?" As he spoke, he took the fan from my hand and began fanning me instead. Back then, I had thought it was a sweet moment for our little family of 3. Behind it, there had actually been such a reason. When he kissed the child in my belly, had he been imagining the sweet future of our family of 3? Or was he worrying over whether his little mouse would graduate smoothly? Chapter 04. I almost could not continue reading the messages that followed, because every single one corresponded to a point in my own life, making everything feel absurd and laughable. While I was immersed in the happiness of our family of 3, my husband's heart had already veered off course. In the chat records, she reminded him to eat breakfast on time. He urged her to study hard for her certifications, do well in her internship, and become an outstanding graduate. Both sides found reasons to treat the other to meals, movies, and things like that. It seemed as though they had endless topics to talk about every day. Oscar cared far more about her than he did about our family. He gave her internal referrals for jobs and helped her revise her resume bit by bit. Even after she started working, he still helped her negotiate with clients and secure major orders. There were many things between them that were worth celebrating and being happy about: promotions, signed contracts, getting tickets to a concert she liked. They could share all of it with each other and celebrate together. Daniela's WeChat status was, "People are always stubbornly attached to what they chose at first sight." In their last WeChat message, Oscar was still advising her to bravely step out and seek her own happiness. Daniela merely replied to him, "What I've wanted most has always been impossible. Let's just leave it at this. It's fine too." Chapter 05. When Oscar came back, I had already entrusted a lawyer with drafting the divorce agreement. He glanced at it once but did not take it. Then he flew into a rage and said, "Amelia, is this really necessary? She and I never crossed the line. After so many years of feelings between us, do you really have to go this far?" The emotions that had been suppressed in my chest could no longer be held back. I broke down and shouted at him, "Yes, after so many years of feelings between us, did you really have to treat me like a fool? I'm asking you, did you really have to?" "Yes. That's right. You two didn't sleep together, so you're so noble, aren't you? I've finished praising you. Are you satisfied now?" "Amelia, your emotions are unstable right now, so I won't argue with you. This matter was my fault, but from beginning to end, I truly never did anything to wrong you. Once you calm down, we'll talk properly." He tried to soothe me, his palm moving toward my shoulder. I dodged away in disgust. Ha, ha, ha ha ha. Furious to the extreme, I actually laughed. He was so logically self-contained. In his heart, even now, he still felt that he had not wronged me in the slightest. He believed that as long as the two of them had not taken that final step, it did not count as cheating. And he, Oscar, had done right by me and our child. I pointed at the luggage beside him and said, "I can no longer live with you. Move out for now. Let's finish the procedures as soon as possible. As for the relevant division of assets, have your lawyer talk to mine." "Amelia, do you not care about our feelings at all?" He looked at me in astonishment and asked in shock, "Oscar, you'd better hope I still care about some of our old feelings. Otherwise, what happens between you and me won't be as simple as parting on good terms." "What do you mean? After working for so many years, are you still this stupid? You don't want to destroy everything you have now, do you? And that stinking mouse of yours either. If you want to come at someone, come at me." "Amelia, don't go looking for her and acting crazy. See? His attempt to win me back could not involve her. How devoted of him." I raised my hand and slapped him across the face again. "Acting crazy? I fucking went crazy a long time ago." "What? You care about her so much and still keep dragging me along, refusing to divorce me? Has your performative personality kicked in? Let me tell you, Oscar, I've already been very restrained. I deliberately sent Sophia away. You'd better sign the divorce agreement soon. If you don't, I have plenty of ways to make you sign. He sat dejectedly in the dining chair beside him. He and I faced each other in confrontation, like two desperate beasts. At that moment, I saw my reflection in his eyes. I looked so hideous, but none of that mattered anymore. The moment I saw those chat records, I had already gone mad. Chapter 06. In the end, Oscar still did not sign that divorce agreement. He carried his luggage and moved out first, saying we would talk again once my emotions had stabilized. Even though I told him that my decision to divorce had been made very calmly, he still did not believe me. He asked me whether I was not going to consider Sophia at all. I asked him in return, when you did those things, did you ever think about your identity as a father and a husband? I had imagined many obstacles to the divorce, but the one thing I had never imagined was that the first people to help Oscar would be my own parents. The day after Oscar moved out, my parents came over. My father smoked beside us. My mother spoke with a worried expression. Amelia, I basically understand what happened. In a marriage, over the course of a lifetime, it's inevitable that someone may occasionally let their mind wander. You can't draw the line too clearly. After all, you two have so many years of feelings between you. Besides, you're already at this age. If you really divorce Oscar, what will you do in the future? I worked as a freelancer over the past 2 days. Aside from taking Sophia to school, I had spent most of my time lying down. I kept feeling very tired, very exhausted, as though even the struggle with Oscar had drained all my strength. Yet at a time like this, from my family, from the people tied to me by blood, I received not the slightest bit of comfort. Instead, what I saw was a mediator standing entirely on Oscar's side. What will I do? Before I was with Oscar, was I unable to live? Mom, I'm an adult. I'm certain that I truly can't continue living with him anymore. If you really care about me, then don't put any more psychological pressure on me. Amelia, how old are you? Are you still going to act so impulsively? You're almost 30. Can't you be a little less selfish? Sophia is still so young. Are you going to make her grow up without a father? Can't you tolerate even the tiniest grain of sand in your eyes? What does this have to do with my age? Just because I'm almost 30, does that mean I no longer have human rights? Is Oscar going to die after the divorce? How does Sophia suddenly have no father? If I pretend nothing happened and swallow all the grievances, will you give me an award? Forget it. I can't win an argument against you. You're so capable. Do whatever you want. If you can't even tolerate Oscar, I'd like to see what kind of man in the future could tolerate a personality like yours. She slapped the table, then irritably stood up to leave. I quickly walked to the door and opened it for them. When she saw what I was doing, she became even angrier. What? Amelia, are you trying to kick your father and me out now? You think you're something now? You keep staring at Oscar's problems, but have you never thought about your own? With a temper as rotten as yours, have you ever considered that other people might be sick of you too? She continued attacking me. It was as though she had not come today to comfort a daughter whose marriage had been wounded, but to verify a math problem. In her eyes, a daughter as awful as me was destined to have a failed marriage. I no longer knew how to describe the disappointment in my heart. That's right. A terrible daughter like you will have no one who wants her in the future. But even if no one wants her, she will still get divorced. Because someone this terrible doesn't need anyone to want her. She can want herself. As for that wonderful Oscar, since you admire him so much, you can try and see whether he's willing to be your son, and whether he'll still be willing to acknowledge you too. Amelia, what kind of words are those? If your father and I weren't doing this for your own good, would we have come all this way? Just as my mother and I were locked in a hoarse confrontation, my father finally finished his cigarette. He spoke from the side like a spectator. I already told you not to come. Your wonderful daughter has such strong opinions. Who can control her? Whether she lives well or badly, what does that have to do with us? Even if she dies, it has nothing to do with us. That kind of sarcastic mockery, those cold and heartless words, it was as though we were not father and daughter, but enemies with a deep hatred between us. My emotions erupted all at once. Once again, I was provoked until I was like a madwoman. I smashed the vase and stools in the living room. screaming at them to get out, as though he had been waiting to see me like this all along. My father's emotions immediately surged as well. This is how you treat your parents. No wonder someone like you would get divorced. Even if you remarry in the future, you'll probably be beaten to death by some man. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. I suddenly calmed down. The more I went crazy, the more pleased he probably became. I stopped screaming and instead looked at him calmly. Dad, whether I'll be beaten to death by a man is uncertain, but when you get old, you will definitely fall into my hands. Keep treating me with this attitude. In the future, I'll slowly return it all to you. He immediately went silent, but he still pretended to be fierce. You think you can threaten me? Let me tell you, I know the law. If you refuse to support me in my old age, just watch whether I sue you or not. Then go ahead and sue. I'll be waiting for your lawyer's letter. I fired back coldly. At this point, my mother came out to make peace again. She wiped her tears and said, Amelia, how can there be an overnight grudge between father and daughter? Your father is worried about you too. Don't deliberately anger your father anymore. I'm not saying this out of anger. I'm saying this to you very seriously. Since you both know very clearly in your hearts that the person you'll rely on in the future is me, then can't you even put my interests and feelings first? Or are you so certain of me that no matter how badly you hurt me, I won't hold it against you? If parents don't know how to love and protect their children, then why would they think their children will take good care of them when they grow old? By the end, I had instead become calmer and calmer. The person you forgive without limits is the person who can hurt you without limits. Chapter 07. My mother damaged her health when she gave birth to me. After that, she could no longer have children. So when I was little, my father did not like me very much. My mother also felt that it was because of me that she could not have a son, and that my father did not like her either. In my memory, my father was different from the other fathers in the village. He was unwilling to go out and work, and he was impatient even when farming. He said that without a son, everything was futile. So when I was little, I almost never bought new clothes, never bought snacks, and often did not even have enough to eat or enough warm clothes to wear. One particularly deep impression from my childhood was from when the overall economy had not improved. I often went hungry to the fields to dig up sweet potatoes, then casually washed the muddy sweet potatoes in the ditch and gnawed on them. Another was that whenever it rained, I would take a winnowing basket to the opening of the ditch to trap fish and shrimp. That was a rare meat dish. The rest of my memories were of endless arguments at home. Sometimes, after my father beat my mother to the ground, I would go over to help her up. She would hold me and cry bitterly, saying that if it were not for me, she would have divorced him long ago. Later, slowly, I began advising her to divorce him, saying that I hoped she would get divorced. As a result, she flew into a rage and slapped me, asking how I could be so wicked as to actually wish for my own parents to divorce. Life began to improve when, one day, my mother discovered that I was very good at studying. At the elementary school in the village, I was almost always first in every exam. Then I went to middle school in town. My grades remained among the best. Almost every homeroom teacher told her that I would definitely have prospects in the future. Such simple words suddenly ignited her fighting spirit. Since my father would not go out to work, she went out to work instead. She said she wanted to save tuition money for me. Later on, my father barely even farmed anymore, and most of the living expenses my mother sent back were spent by him. Fortunately, I was born in a good era. At school, I could survive on various scholarships and subsidies. The greatest conflict between me and my so-called father broke out when I was in the second year of middle school. At that time, it was almost New Year's. My mother had finally managed to rush back from another city. The little hard-earned money she had made over the year had been taken by him for gambling. Not only had he lost most of it, he also wanted to ask my mother for more. When I came home from evening self-study, my mother had just been punched to the ground by him. Her nose was covered in blood. She kept tugging at the hem of his pants, begging him not to leave. If you dare go out tonight, I'll immediately buy a bottle of pesticide and take Amelia with me. How pathetic. Even after being treated by him like this, the only method she could think of was still to use harm to my life and hers in exchange for this man's pity. But I was not that kind of person. I was not afraid of this man. In this world, there would always be someone who could punish him. I stepped into the room and locked the door. This house had been rented by my mother. The house in the village had collapsed long ago. My mother said she rented this house to make it convenient for me to study. But in truth, it was more to give this man a place to live. After all, who would make their own middle school daughter keep an eye on her father to stop him from gambling too much? There was an old-fashioned landline in the room. I called the police directly. The reasons I reported were domestic violence and gambling, just as I had expected. My mother did not thank me. Instead, she tried to hit me again. Are you an animal? It's almost New Year, and you want to send your own father to prison. That's right. You only just found out. What good thing could be born from two rotten people like you? I'll tell you this too. The next time you lay hands on each other again, no matter which one of you it is, I'll still call the police. To be honest, whose parents are like you too? At worst, I'll send both of you in. Anything would be better than how I'm living now. She raised her hand to hit me again. I glared at her. What? You don't dare lay a hand on that bastard man. So you only dare lay a hand on me? Her hand dropped, and she only kept saying over and over that her life was bitter. I no longer listened to any of that, and I no longer tried to change her. My mother had her own lessons to learn. I could not learn them for her. Afterward, she spent some money and asked many people for favors, finally getting her man released before New Year. On the day he came out, my father threatened to break my legs. I borrowed a classmate's phone and was about to call the police. My mother knelt on the ground and begged me to stop making trouble. She repeatedly promised me that my father would absolutely never lay a hand on me again, and only then did I give up on calling the police. But from then on, my father said I was a heartless animal. He said he would absolutely never be able to rely on me in this life. I said he was right. I said that a man like him was born to have his family line cut off, and that the fact I had survived was because the country's policies were good and gave me a second life. I was not speaking nonsense. When I was little, for the sake of one bite of food, I nearly lost my life several times. When I went to catch fish, I was almost swept away by the current several times. When I picked up scrap, I even ran into human traffickers. If I had not matured too early, I really might not have been able to escape. Being born into a family like that and being able to grow up safely was, in itself, a kind of luck. And when my life was that difficult, that so-called father of mine could sit at the gambling table and lose tens and hundreds at a time. So in my heart, I had never regarded him as a father. He was merely a disgusting man whose biological relationship with me I could not get rid of. Chapter 08. Oscar and I met in high school. Back then, he was a fringe delinquent who had gotten into the school by paying extra enrollment fees. I was a little white flower struggling through hardship. Yet on the first day of school, the teacher assigned us as desk mates. Oscar's mother took the initiative to come find me, hoping I could supervise her son's studies. I found it baffling and politely told her that I was only her son's ordinary classmate. Oscar saw that scene and felt deeply embarrassed. He drove his mother away on the spot. Then he looked down at me from above and said, "Good student Amelia, you don't actually think being good at studying makes you impressive, do you?" I rolled my eyes at him, not even wanting to talk to him. Soon, seats would be changed according to exam rankings. I would soon be rid of this rather unlikable deskmate. Oscar had the face of a school heartthrob straight out of a teen comic. Sitting beside him was quite troublesome. Every day, people handed him things, either food, drinks, or love letters. During breaks, I immediately hid away. But during class, having things passed over again and again really disrupted me. Out of impatience, I later stopped passing them to him. People in their student days were far too dramatic. A few girls thought I refused to pass things along because I was jealous and liked Oscar. At first, they deliberately scribbled all over my textbooks. Rumors about me also started spreading on the school forum. Later, they dripped red ink onto my chair. I grabbed the hair of the girl who had laughed the loudest and poured an entire bottle of red ink over her head. What followed was the same old story of campus bullying, except I was a little different from ordinary victims. One afternoon, I deliberately pretended that I had stayed behind in the classroom because of homework. Those 3 girls punched and kicked me under the surveillance cameras. After calculating that the cameras had captured everything clearly, I broke away from them and ran toward the restroom on the first floor. That afternoon, I had secretly turned off the faucet in that restroom. At that time, There was absolutely no way anyone would be there. I lured them into chasing me into the restroom. Then, when they slipped on the dish soap I had placed there in advance, I grabbed a broom from the side, dipped it in the filth from the toilet, and struck those annoying things again and again. By the time Oscar arrived, panting, I was sitting on the floor, pitifully telling the police how I had been violently treated and had no choice but to hide in the restroom. The surveillance footage clearly captured the way they beat me. I refused to back down and insisted on pressing charges. Together with the obscene rumors on the school forum, old grudges and new ones were settled at once. Through the IP addresses, they were directly found. In the end, all three of them transferred schools and compensated me with a large sum of money. Afterward, Oscar asked me, "Were they really the only ones bullying you? What? Are you trying to play detective now?" I mocked. While he was left speechless, I continued sneering, "But whatever you do has nothing to do with me." Still, at the very least, a person should have one basic principle, and that's not causing trouble for others, right? Unexpectedly, Oscar did not choose to argue with me then. Instead, he said in an unnatural tone, "I'm sorry, Amelia. Because of me, I caused you a lot of trouble." I actually did not care whether he was apologetic or not. It was just that he began to become somewhat different. He would help me clean when it was my turn on duty. I was the class representative for several subjects, and he would rush ahead of me to carry the homework to the teacher's office, then carry it back for me after the teachers had finished checking it. Even because of what had happened between me and those three girls, when they gathered a bunch of people from outside the school to try to beat me up, Oscar directly warned that anyone who dared touch me would be going against him. I did not care. Even if they came, it would merely give me a few more ways to make money. After all, I was genuinely short on money back then. That sense of insecurity ran through my entire youth. I was constantly worried that I would be unable to keep studying, unable to firmly hold on to that life-saving straw. Before that, I still found Oscar annoying, because a lot of trouble had started because of him. So much so that later, when I was transferred directly into the elite class through exams, I did not even say goodbye to him. That was the first time he blocked me downstairs from the teaching building and asked me in disappointment, "Amelia, do you hate me a lot?" "Yes." "Why?" "You're troublesome." "Then if I don't cause you trouble anymore, can you try not to hate me?" I did not answer. In my eyes at the time, everything there was nothing more than an insignificant passerby in my life. I would keep walking, until I reached the life I wanted. Chapter 09. After that, Oscar seemed to become a different person. He stopped hanging around with shady people from society and completely changed himself to study. He was even exceptionally transferred into our class by the school leaders during the second year of high school. When we met, he walked over to my side again and said, "Amelia, you can't get rid of me." I did not comment much. Oscar's mother was very grateful to me. She stubbornly believed that Oscar had become fond of studying because of me. We became desk mates again, thanks to Oscar. I was also very well taken care of during the final half year. Whenever his mother brought him things, there was always a portion for me too. She said it was for your cool desk mate. What I remember most clearly about those days was that the chestnut chicken his mother made was delicious. And when the weather was hot, the red bean ice Oscar brought from home was truly refreshing. There was also one noon when the power went out, and the classroom was unbearably hot and stuffy. Oscar had come early from home, holding a small battery-powered fan. There was also a large palm leaf fan. That noon, I slept very soundly during my nap. When I opened my eyes and caught sight of the beads of sweat on his neck, my heart skipped a beat. The days that followed grew increasingly tense. All kinds of competitions and exams came one after another. As the time to choose university preferences approached, Oscar was extremely nervous. He insisted on seeing what I applied for before choosing his own. He repeatedly asked me whether I was planning to dump him once we entered university. To be honest, that was the first time in my life that someone cared about me so much. The turning point that brought me and him together happened when we were in university. At that time, I had worked part-time until very late and encountered a torrential rain. For safety reasons, I did not return to school. As a result, the bus heading back to campus overturned. It caused many casualties. My phone was damaged by the rain at the time. Oscar could not reach me no matter what he did. By the time my phone was repaired, He and his family had practically blown it up with calls. I would never forget that day. When Oscar hugged me with bloodshot eyes. Amelia, you fucking did that on purpose, didn't you? Are you trying to kill me? When I hugged him back, his whole body was trembling. He said he had never been so afraid in his entire life. Chapter 10. When we had just gotten together, he said that the first time he saw me, he knew I would one day take his surname. Later, when we got married, he said again, "See, you have my surname now." It was as though the Oscar who had liked me so much back then and the Oscar now were two different people. At the moment I married him, I truly thought we would be happy. The atmosphere in his family was truly wonderful. His parents loved each other, and their relationship had remained as good as ever for decades. In all the years since we got married, I had not even seen them argue. Back then, I thought that their present would be our future. Chapter 11. In the second month of my stalemate with Oscar, when I was sleeping in a daze, a hand suddenly reached over from around my waist. I was so frightened that I screamed on the spot. The voice-activated lamp by the bed instantly lit up, and I saw Oscar's face, full of guilt. After only the briefest pause, he pressed me down at once. "Amelia, don't reject me." He kissed me without any rhythm or order. I raised my hand to slap him, but he tightly restrained my hands. Only when I kicked him between the legs did he finally calm down. "Why? Before, wasn't it because of this that you and I, Oscar, can you stop pretending to be stupid?" I knew what he was talking about. Back then, after I had just given birth to Sophia, he had basically stopped touching me. Compared to when we had just gotten together, when he had wanted to do it almost every day, he was practically a completely different person. At that time, I had always thought it was my own problem. I went for scar repair treatments, worked out, and got beauty treatments. I became less and less like myself. There was even one time when, following a friend's advice, I wore lingerie to spice things up. The thin, cool fabric hung from my body, and I felt as though wind was leaking in from every direction. I wondered whether our life had become too bland, causing him to lose interest. But the moment I lifted the blanket, under the dim light, I actually saw a flash of embarrassment cross his face. The pose I had assumed and the expression on my face froze right there. Then, looking at his face, which seemed as though he were about to visit a grave, I angrily grabbed the blanket, turned my back to him, and refused to look at him. Nothing hurts a woman's self-esteem more than her husband's utterly uninterested gaze. Even then, I was still reflecting on myself, thinking that this kind of thing should not be forced. I even worried whether there was something wrong with his body and privately asked around for several reliable andrologists. But when I cautiously brought it up to him, what I received in return was his furious outburst. He blamed me, saying that all I knew how to think about all day was this kind of thing. Even now, I still remember how my face instantly turned bright red, my mind going completely blank. I had actually been described by my own husband as a woman starved for sex. Later, I persuaded myself again, if there was none of that, then so be it. A platonic relationship was fine too. After all, we had so many years of feelings between us. But the truth turned out to be, because my husband was emotionally cheating, his body had lost interest in me. Our daughter was awakened by our argument and carefully knocked on the door. "Mom, what happened?" "It's nothing." Mom had a nightmare and dreamed of something dirty. Then, "Mom, I'll sleep with you tonight. If I'm with you, you won't be scared." My heart softened completely. The only thing worth keeping from this marriage was my daughter. "No need. Go back to your room first. Mom is afraid it might spread to you and make you see it too." I sent my daughter away and told Oscar to get out immediately. "Amelia, do you really have to be so ruthless? Do you want our daughter to have an unhappy childhood like yours?" Those words completely enraged me. "Oscar, if you love your daughter, then what are you and your little mouse doing? Do you want me to wait until our daughter grows up, then show her how her father and his little mouse met?" "Amelia, why are you always so extreme? Can people really go through life without making mistakes at all?" He was still twisting logic to justify himself, and I only felt that the person before me was unbearably unfamiliar. "Do you want me to call the police?" "Amelia, do whatever you want. No matter what, I will not divorce you." After leaving those words behind, he finally left. No matter what. Oscar. I said that no matter what, you would definitely sign. Chapter 12. In the days that followed, all I did was sit downstairs at Daniela's company for a while. Oscar immediately lost his composure. He hurried over, grabbed my arm, and tried to take me away. Daniela did not even show her face. Amelia. How many times do I have to say it? Nothing ever happened between her and me. What exactly are you trying to do? I shook off his hand and crossed my arms, coldly looking at his anxious expression. Oscar, you don't know what I want. I won't agree. If you're angry, just come at me. I ignored him and walked straight toward the elevator. Daniela could not hold herself back and came downstairs first. She said nothing. Her eyes were red, and she ran away as though she had suffered some enormous grievance. Amelia, are you satisfied now? Oscar questioned me furiously. Just then, a staff member came out of the elevator and said, Miss, sorry to keep you waiting. Our boss values your promotion for our product very much and is waiting for you in the office. I shrugged and patted Oscar on the shoulder. You and your little mouse have such poor psychological endurance. We'll be seeing each other quite often in the future. So what are you going to do? After I finished discussing business that afternoon, Oscar sent me another WeChat message. Amelia, this really has nothing to do with Daniela. She's still a kid. Don't put this kind of psychological pressure on her anymore. She really can't handle it. Psychological pressure? If there were no ghosts in her heart, why would there be pressure? Oscar, my patience has limits. Right now, I haven't even done anything yet, and you're already this worried. If I really do something, don't regret it. He did not reply again, until I appeared at Daniela's company several times, and she herself could not hold back. She told people in her company with whom she was close about the matter. After that, the entire company was full of rumors. She could not bear the pointing and whispering of her colleagues. Late one night, she slit her wrists in a suicide attempt. At that time, I was deep in sleep. Out of nowhere, I received a call from Oscar. His tone was unusually cold. Amelia, I should have known long ago. How could you possibly let her go? Are you satisfied now? It took me some effort to figure out what had happened. So the little mouse had attempted suicide. Waking me up in the middle of the night and disturbing my dreams was honestly quite annoying. What did I do to her? Was I the one who made the two of you act like hypocrites? Was I the one who made her shamelessly go around seeking understanding and support, only to provoke everyone's anger? Amelia, do you not have even the slightest bit of compassion? Don't you just want a divorce? Fine, I'll grant you that. The call was abruptly hung up. That very night, I drove to the hospital and delivered the divorce agreement. Divorce truly was something that wounded the muscles and bones, since Oscar had been dragging it out and refusing to divorce. Although it would eventually be possible through legal means, it would truly be troublesome. Now that he was acting on impulse, I naturally had to seize this opportunity quickly. When I arrived on the floor where Daniela was hospitalized, Oscar initially thought I was going to do something again. He kicked over the chair beside him. Fuck. Are you fucking done or not? I did not argue with him. I only calmly waved the divorce agreement in my hand. He froze for a moment. You really fucking know how to do this. Who gives a damn about whom? He took the pen from my hand and quickly signed his name. There were 2 copies. I carefully placed them into the folder, turned around, and left briskly. Chapter 13. After that day, I never saw Oscar again. The next time I heard news of him was several months later, when Daniela took the initiative to come find me. She said Oscar was in terrible shape, drinking himself unconscious every day. He had also quit his job. She hoped I would go see him, and then said that there really had never been anything between them. From beginning to end, I had misunderstood them. I felt as though I had swallowed a fly. We were already divorced. Yet she still came to drag me into this nonsense. Naturally, I did not speak politely. Wow, you're so kind, so pure, so innocent. From beginning to end, you never interfered in someone else's relationship. Never coveted a married man. Everyone simply misunderstood such a pure and kind girl like you. Amelia, do you have to speak with so many thorns? Can you really be so heartless towards someone you shared so many years of feelings with? How could someone like you deserve to be loved? Heh. What are you laughing at? I did not answer. Instead, I asked. Guess why I was willing to see you today when I clearly find you both so annoying? Why? Because I've been a little short on inspiration lately and needed some material. Especially looking at weirdos like you gives me the feeling that I'm watching some bizarre human curiosity case. You. How petty. I had taken the initiative to make things easy for her and Oscar. Yet she was not even willing to provide me with a little material. She left directly. Chapter 14. My life slowly returned to the right track. Sometimes my mother would send things to me and my daughter, or she would hint openly and secretly that, while I was still not too old, I could find Sophia another father. I told her calmly not to do such things anymore. This kind of dispensable concern was no longer necessary either. I had long since passed the age when I needed it. As for the retirement issue she was worried about, before she could receive the Social Security I had bought for her, I would give her living expenses on time, but there would be nothing else. To be honest, if we were going to talk about feelings between us, then when I needed feelings the most, she had not given them to me. If we were going to talk about benefits, then even if she wanted to treat me as a retirement tool, she should at least have invested in that tool first. The truth was, fortunately, I had foresight during winter and summer vacations, and in my daily life. I had always worked part-time to earn money. Later, I also wrote articles. Otherwise, I would not have had the money to complete my studies. Most of the money she had worked hard to earn over the years had been squandered by that father of mine. She questioned whether I was not afraid that my daughter would learn from me if I treated her this way. I asked her, how had I treated her? Was reducing contact such an unforgivable crime? She had no plan for her life and no direction whatsoever. So much so that I was almost the one covering for her throughout the second half of her life. Retirement and medical care. I saved money and solved all of it for her. As for Sophia, I gave birth to her because of love. Because I was certain I wanted a child. I was certain I hoped this child would live well. She is a mirror of me. If she does not treat me well, then the corresponding side of me must also have a problem. My mother seemed to never understand how naturally children love their parents at the beginning. How deeply I once depended on her and longed for her. But later, too many things forced me to learn to separate from her, so that each of us could walk our own path in life. Chapter 15. I did not restrict Oscar from seeing Sophia. After the divorce, he was still Sophia's father. Of course, the premise was that, in my heart, he counted as a qualified father. If he were like my father, I would definitely impose restrictions in that regard. Without the influence of other factors, I was willing for Sophia to receive one more share of love. Time is the best medicine. And Oscar's life gradually returned to normal as well. He still did not get together with his little mouse, but they ate together and went shopping together. And that girl even went to his place every day to cook for him. Once again, Oscar picked Sophia up to take her to the amusement park. After I finished my work, I went to pick Sophia up and take her home. He chatted with me for a few moments and said he was preparing to start a business, automobile mortgage leasing, because he was Sophia's father. I kindly reminded him that the current overall economic environment was not very suitable for starting a business. His expression changed immediately, and he accused me. Amelia, do you know this? Is it only my fault that our relationship became like this? You never encouraged me. Whatever I do, you always think of the worst first. I could not listen anymore and immediately interrupted him. Oscar, how many more times do I have to tell you? Aside from being Sophia's parents, there is no relationship between us anymore. Whether you start a business or not has nothing to do with whether I agree or disagree. I also hope that in the future, aside from matters involving Sophia, our meetings will no longer involve anything else. Chapter 16. Oscar had witnessed Amelia's coldness before, but only when that coldness was used on him did he feel how sharp it truly was. He suddenly remembered the chocolate ice cream cake she had brought on the day she exposed him. When she left, that cake had melted into a complete mess. He scooped some up with a spoon and tasted it, only to find his mouth filled with bitterness. He clearly remembered that he had eaten from that cake shop for many years. It was the best ice cream cake shop within miles. He had still held onto a sliver of hope when Amelia allowed him to see Sophia. He had even been delighted, thinking this was the last bit of leeway she had left him. But the way she interacted with him afterward, and the words she said, once again knocked him back to where he started. He thought, what exactly was Amelia being so arrogant about? Since she thought he was incapable, he insisted on starting a business and showing her. And so, with the savings his parents had accumulated over most of their lives, he plunged headfirst into the army of entrepreneurs. Later, after 6 consecutive months of bad debts, he had actually already begun to panic. But when he met Daniela's expectant eyes, when she said he would definitely succeed, when she said that in her heart there was nothing he could not do, he gathered his courage again and continued pouring money into it, until, in the end, he lost everything. The unpaid debts outside grew more and more numerous. Later still, he panicked and lost his judgment. When collecting debts, he and his friends used improper methods. He was treated as a typical example of organized crime-related activity and sentenced to 10 years. He felt as though everything before his eyes had gone dark. His parents, already past 50, were still running everywhere for him. Amelia brought Sophia to see him one last time. She was still the same as ever. Faced with his situation, she was as calm as though facing a stranger. She no longer considered everything for him as she had before. No longer planned for him. He remembered when they had just graduated, how she accompanied him to company interviews, discussing little by little how to revise his resume. Back then, she had treated his gains and losses as though they were her own. After marriage, even more so, she would take the initiative to help him manage relationships with colleagues, inviting the wives of people in charge to meals and trips. Later, every rise in his career had her by his side each time. They had once been the happiest family, but now, everything was gone. At that moment, he suddenly realized that they had truly become two parallel lines. If not for Sophia, he might not even have had the chance to see her. He should have known long ago. She had always been that decisive. He had spent so many years getting her to accept him. And in the end, the person who made her give up on him was also him. He wondered whether the 17-year-old Oscar would resent the 30-year-old Oscar for losing Amelia just like that. Chapter 17. In the days that followed, Oscar never saw Amelia again. He only heard bits and pieces about her from his parents. Later, she fell in love and got married. Her husband was even mixed race and several years younger than her. Sophia grew up very well, generous, bright, and confident. Whenever she was not studying, she traveled around the world with Amelia and Amelia's husband. In the eyes of outsiders, they were a happy family of 3, and all of this had once been his. He only saw Daniela one last time. At that time, he was about to be released from prison. Daniela suddenly came to see him. She said it was all because of him that her life had been ruined. He looked confused and slowly listened as she finished complaining. Only then did he learn that, years after Daniela got married, her husband had discovered what had happened between him and her. They were now constantly fighting over divorce. It seemed that every cause a person planted, even if the consequences could not be seen at the time, would eventually reveal itself later in life. At that moment, he could no longer lie to himself about how shameless he had been back then, even trying to push all the blame onto Amelia. Fortunately, Amelia had not bought into that at all. She was an extremely honest person. When problems appeared in the marriage, she had not even left him time to escape. She went straight to him and confronted the issue directly. But the more she was like that, the more afraid he became. He was afraid she would discover it, and also afraid she would not. Every day, he felt like he was walking a tightrope, until Amelia pierced through that thin layer of pretense, leaving him with nowhere to hide. And then he watched her turn away with absolute resolve. After he was released from prison, he wanted to see her once, but he could not even find a reason. Only when he went to see Sophia did he catch a distant glimpse of her. She was leaning against the shoulder of a tall man, smiling brilliantly. Amelia truly was someone who would always keep moving forward.